I'm going to do the very quick introduction for our next presenter, but it's actually our host for the session is my colleague David Hunt. He's an Assistant Deputy Minister with Manitoba Agriculture. He and I share the actual same anniversary date for our appointments. It's one of the things that we share, and we also share a passion for agriculture. That's all I'm going to say about David. If he wants to add anything else, come on up, David, and if he could introduce our next session.
Thank you, Morris. That was more than enough information about me, and I'm here happy to introduce our next speaker. Today we have Eric Mittenthal. He's the Chief Strategy Officer at the North American Meat Institute, previously serving as the organization's Vice President of Public Affairs and Vice President of Sustainability. He leads the Meat Institute's Protein Pact strategy, which is focused on implementing a framework for continuous improvement throughout the industry and a commitment to greater transparency to meet consumer and customer expectations. Eric joined NAMI from the International Food Information Council, where he worked closely with food industry communications leaders, led efforts in connecting with journalists and influencers, and launched many of the successful social media platforms. Eric moved to Washington, D.C. following a career as a television reporter and producer in several markets around the country, including Atlanta, Jacksonville, North Carolina, and Idaho Falls, Idaho. He graduated from Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, and also received a master's degree in biomedical sciences from Eastern Virginia Medical School in Norfolk, Virginia. And today, Eric's going to be talking about Protein Pact, accelerating the animal protein sector's progress towards global sustainable development goals. So join me in welcoming Eric.
Good afternoon. I probably have the hardest speaking slot right after lunch, so hopefully everybody's up and ready to talk a little bit more about some of the work that's going on across North America. And I'm really excited to be here. Really appreciate the invitation to come talk about Protein Pact and the work that we're doing. I'm really excited to hear about Project Aspire. I think what you'll hear from me is very similar to what you're seeing in Project Aspire and from so many of the speakers that you've already heard from this morning, which I think is awesome. Our goal is to be very consistent with the work that's going on across North America and globally, and we are all about collaboration and finding ways that we can work together with partners throughout the supply chain to have a meaningful impact on developing sustainable animal protein that is a solution for healthy people and a healthy planet. Let me tell you a little bit about the North American Meat Institute and our members. We represent packers and processors across North America, representing 95% of the red meat that is produced and 70% of the turkey. Our members range from the very largest, Cargill and Tyson, Smithfield, Hormel, Maple Leaf is a major member of ours, down to Uncle Charlie's Sausage Company and everybody in between. It really runs the entire gamut of the industry, and so we represent all of them and want to work with all of our membership to make progress. Protein Pact is a sustainability framework for our membership, but it's also about connecting the various efforts that are occurring throughout the supply chain. And we were challenged by our membership and our leadership several years ago, back in 2018, actually in a meeting in Toronto, to be more proactive and less defensive as an industry. We are a traditional trade association in Washington, D.C. Historically, we have been there to be on the defensive on behalf of our members and really being the shield for our members. And we knew and recognized that if we wanted to make an impact on consumer trust in the industry and improve our long-term sustainability, that we needed to take a different, more proactive approach. And so that was the genesis of Protein Pact. Much of it led by Maple Leaf, was one of the leaders in the room that was very vocal about the direction that we needed to go. And we talk about it as a sustainability framework, and I'm going to share some more of the details of it, but I've actually been trying to move away from the term sustainability lately, because I think when we talk about sustainability with food producers and farmers and ranchers, it's a term that means many different things to many different people. It's a term that I think can be a little bit scary to folks when you just talk about this big overarching term of sustainability. For us, it's really about continuous improvement, and it's about measuring the things that we are doing as an industry and that we will aspire to do as an industry moving forward. And so we're focusing more on the continuous improvement aspect and making sure that we are doing it in alignment with what consumer expectations are, as well as our customer base and investors, being more transparent as an industry and connecting to all of the various supply chain efforts that are in existence, and many of which that have come before us. We are built on the foundation of work that's occurred in the beef and pork and poultry and dairy industries. We want to connect to those and make sure that we are amplifying those effectively. I like to talk about the why. We've heard a lot about this already today, and so I was at COP27 in Egypt last month. I did not go to COP15, unfortunately, here in Montreal over the last couple of weeks. But the role of animal protein when it comes to climate was a hot topic of conversation. And one of the big takeaways I had there was the web of groups that believe that animal protein is something that needs to be drastically reduced to be a climate solution, and how effective, how well they collaborate together, and how intertwined they are at the UN level was really a major takeaway of mine. And I think we see with some of the initiatives that are ongoing, there are significant challenges that we face in the animal protein sector at the UN level with recommendations to make drastic reductions. One of the items here is a tweet from the UN Climate Change talking about the C40s initiative, which Toronto is one city that has signed on, looking to over time reduce consumption, public consumption of animal protein to zero. You have groups like the World Benchmarking Alliance and the Good Food Finance Network that is very focused on financial levers and investor levers to reduce animal protein consumption. Our speaker from Maple Leaf earlier mentioned the FAIR initiative. They have $69 trillion in assets and are extremely powerful and well tied into the UN and FAO. And so that has influence and has an impact on our industry. A couple of the items that came out of of COP27, specifically, a big focus on the idea of the true value of food and considering the externalities that go into that, which in the way that it's defined by the groups that are pushing it is not a positive perspective for animal protein. Thinking about the UN is working with FAIR on a climate roadmap between now and 2050 for the food system. The UN FAO is also working on a True Value of Food initiative. World Business Council for Sustainable Development is working on a responsible meat initiative that we have been involved in and other companies have been involved in. It's very similar to Protein Pact. It's similar to Project Aspire, but again, something that's coming from the international level that has an impact. And then much of this is based on the Eat Lancet report that came out several years ago. 2.0 is on its way in 2025. They are working on it right now. And needless to say, it will have a negative perspective on animal protein once again. All of this is impacting our customer base. We know that many of the major retail and food service customers are committing to things like science-based targets, expecting their suppliers to do the same. And so we have to be proactive and make sure that we are thinking about all of these different efforts and how we can be prepared for them at an industry level to be able to be successful in the future. The good news is that for consumers, they love meat, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. This is from our Power of Meat study, which is a US-based study, but the vast majority of consumers believe that meat is part of a healthy, balanced diet. Our research found that 98% of households in the US consume meat. They're looking for products that are better for them, better for the environment, and so we want to be able to be responsive and provide those products. But people are looking for permission to continue to enjoy our products, and so our goal is to be able to provide that permission and give them reasons why they should want to continue to enjoy them by showing them the progress that we're making over time. There's great opportunity for business. One of the things that we've been really focused on with our members is making the business case for this work. And this is research that we did in the US with Technomic, looking at what consumer trust is right now on animal protein, and what is the opportunity for the industry as a whole in terms of moving the needle, because it has to have a business benefit in order for this to be successful. We found that consumers right now are basically neutral on animal protein as a whole across a variety of different issues, rating 3.5 out of 5 on a trust scale. If we raise that to a 4 out of 5, that's a $17 billion per year benefit. This is in the US for the animal protein supply chain. On the flip side, if we do nothing, it's a $13 billion loss for the industry. So you're talking about a $30 billion swing for the industry, quite substantial. And so we wanted to hone in on what are the key issues for consumers when we talk about continuous improvement, and where do we need to move the needle. And for us, we landed on 5 focus areas that are animal welfare, environmental impact, food safety, human health and wellness, and labor and human rights. And we initially visualized them all as pillars, individual amongst themselves. But one of the things that our research has shown us is that in the consumer's mind, all of these issues are very closely intertwined. So when a consumer thinks about animal welfare and the potential impacts on animal welfare, it impacts their perception on food safety. Environmental impact impacts their perception of nutrition, and vice versa, and all the way around on all these issues. And so we feel like if we can make substantial impacts and move the needle on all these areas, we really can be successful. In order to do that, we set a series of targets for our industry to define where we want to go between now and 2030. One of our targets is for our members to participate and provide data for us, something we launched this year, and I'll talk a little bit more about. On the animal welfare side, we want our members to be passing audits, animal handling and transport audits between now and 2025. Also between now and 2025, fill the protein gap for hungry people, recognizing that there is more people that are hungry than protein available in the system. It's really an infrastructure issue more so than a protein availability issue. And so how can we improve the infrastructure for feeding people to improve food security? Reduce worker injuries, a key one for us. And then we set a target that all of our members, 360 of them, set science-based targets through the Sciencebased Targets Initiative. And maybe we've highlighted that they've done it. We've had several other members do it since we announced this goal. And we wanted to do this goal because we felt like having the third-party verification of the Sciencebased Targets Initiative was an important step for us to take as an industry to be able to show our progress that's validated by a third party. So we worked with our members on identifying the key measures that we want to make within all of those different focus areas. And I think similar to what I've seen in some of the Project Aspire work, it's all very similar. We have 92 different metrics across 22 different indicators that we want to measure from our members and track our progress on between now and 2030. Some of our measures are baseline, things that we know that the industry is doing already. We want to give our membership the credit for the things that we know that they do. But then we have many more that are achievement-based, and asking members to make commitments on different metrics, track their progress over time, and ultimately deliver on those between now and 2030. Everything that we have supports the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and very purposefully, none of the metrics that we've incorporated into our framework are unique. We wanted to incorporate metrics that exist in some form or another, either through the UN Sustainable Development Goals or things that companies are already being asked for by their customer base, by consumers, by others, because those are the things that we want to be consistent on across the industry that will allow our industry to be working together in a coordinated way towards the things that we know are most important. And so the Sustainable Development Goals provide a really strong basis for that as a start. So within our membership, as I mentioned, we had no history of collecting data in any way within our membership. And that for us required a pretty substantial culture change over the last couple of years to build a level of comfort for our members to share data in a way that could be aggregated across the industry and allow us to show the progress that we're making. For the first time this year, we were able to collect data, and we knew going in that we were going to be somewhere on a spectrum from total garbage and needed to start over to a really strong baseline that we could build off of from the future. And I'm really happy to say that we are very close to the really strong baseline that we can build on for the future. There are tweaks that we need to make based on the data that we collected, but I think we really started out very strong. I want to highlight a few data points for you in all of our focus areas. First off, we had 44% of all of the establishments amongst our North American membership participate in the data collection. All 15 of our largest member companies that are companies that have more than 2,000 employees, and the vast majority of our board leadership participated in the data collection. So altogether, that represents more than 90% of the protein that our members are producing on an annual basis. I mentioned the Science-Based Targets Initiative. We have several companies that have committed or set targets to this point, working with several more to do that. Overall, the vast majority of our members that have reported data thus far have commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, measure scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, something that they have the commitment to. We have to deliver on that over time, but they're off to a really great start. Little bit lower numbers on programs to increase energy efficiency, renewable energy use. Again, these are things that we wanted to set a baseline on and improve on over time amongst our memberships. And then also having land use programs, again, a little bit lower, water withdrawal use programs, really great start. And so all of these areas we're going to be tracking over time to show our improvement. We talked about animal welfare and our goals. One of the things that we found was that we combined animal handling and transport audits in our initial data collection, and fewer companies are actually doing the transport audits than handling audits. And so one of the tweaks that we're going to make next year is to separate that in the data collection. And so we really are basing it on things that are occurring in plant when it comes to animal welfare, asking companies to have programs with suppliers that are consistent with the supplier programs that are already in place that we know are really strong. And so we're not looking to recreate anything there as far as animal welfare standards are concerned, as much as leaning on the things that occur in the producer sector across the industry already. We were a little challenged on worker safety over the last couple of years due to COVID. That made our rates go up a little bit, but overall, members are taking numerous steps to improve safety in facilities, and we are also tracking diversity, equity, inclusion goals as well, and something that we want to continue to build on over time. Food safety for us, we don't have a goal. Food safety is a culture for us, and so it's not something that we felt like we could set a meaningful target on. Our goal really is 100%. And so we know that our members have really strong food safety programs in place. We're looking for those opportunities to find ways to continue to improve those, but we got a really great baseline of the things that companies are doing and ways that we can improve upon those. And then the food security piece. We really have never captured before the extent to which our members support food security through donations of food products, financial commitments, other commitments as well. This year, the White House had a conference on hunger, nutrition, and health. We highlighted our commitment to fill the protein gap. We had several members commit several millions of dollars to infrastructure projects through Feeding America to make a difference in terms of that goal, and that's something that we'll be continuing to work on moving forward. So we apply this with all of a wide range of audiences that we connect with on a regular basis. And I mentioned our industry's goal of changing from a very defensive posture to a more proactive posture. And that really plays out in the way that we engage with these different audiences, because for so long as an organization, it's always been about what we're against when it comes to things from a regulatory perspective or working in the international space. But Protein Pact allows us to highlight what we're for. And what we're for is healthy people, healthy animals, healthy communities, and a healthy planet. And we're utilizing all this data to be able to show that in a meaningful way. As I mentioned, we're not doing this alone. And so we have several different types of partnerships that we've established. These partners on this slide are partners who are specifically funding communications with us. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the communications element of this, but you have so much great sustainability work occurring across the industry. But the one thing that we really felt was missing was that there was no platform to do the communications and tell the message to consumers. And so we're working with all these partners to do that. The communications thus far are primarily US focused, mostly due to resource constraints, but I think we would definitely be interested in expanding into Canada as well, and again with a partnership opportunity. We have a wide range of companies that have sponsored the work that we're doing, specifically to provide education to our members and resources to help drive continuous improvement. And so all of these companies have specifically invested in the education and continuous improvement processes for our members to be able to share technologies, innovations, consulting, in many different types of ways to showcase ways to improve as an industry. And then we've also worked with endorsers, and these are groups amongst our customer base and others to say that this direction that we've taken as an industry aligns with where they're headed, aligns with consumer expectations, and that we are vowing to work together in a coordinated way to share the work that we're doing. And so Canadian Meat Council are actually our very first endorser, so really proud to have them on board. Several of our customer groups are engaged. The Inter-American Cooperative on Agriculture, which represents ag ministers throughout the Americas, is a great partner of ours, and we worked very closely with them at COP27. And so we want to build this group up as well. We're talking to many other folks about endorsement, including some in Canada, and so want to build that out and make sure that we are working across the industry in a consistent way. So I mentioned the communications, and so I wanted to share a little bit about the communications that we're doing and how that's going to be evolving moving forward. First off, we are trying to do communications both to a consumer audience through social channels, but also to key opinion leaders around the world. That's what brought us to COP27, and we are engaging those groups in a number of different ways. Our communications theme is "It's your plate, it's our priority." And the idea behind that is that consumers don't want to be told what to eat. They've been told what to do so much over the last few years, in particular with COVID, that they want to be empowered to make their own decisions about the way they live their lives. And so our goal is to be able to empower them to make those decisions, but to give them the permission they're seeking to continue to enjoy animal protein products. And so that's the idea behind "It's your plate, it's our priority." We've been very actively creating content on social media channels over the last year. If you follow us on Instagram at The Protein Pact, Facebook, same thing. We are now on Twitter, The Protein Pact, as well as LinkedIn. We're doing targeted paid advertising to consumer audiences, primarily focused on millennials. And the idea is to share really visual, engaging content that people want to share and interact with through those channels. We're partnered with various types of influencers, ranging from family-friendly influencers, celebrating different heritages and the role that animal protein plays in different groups, as well as wellness influencers as well. And then we're building out more on the key opinion leader, thought leadership side. And a great deal of that over the past year has been focused on both the registered dietitian community and those who are communicating about nutrition and healthfulness of diets to the international arena as well. And so we were engaged in the White House conference, working with dietitians in various ways. There was a summit called the Societal Role of Meat that developed what's called the Dublin Declaration on the Societal Role of Meat. If you are a scientist with a PhD, highly encourage you to go check that out. It outlines the role that meat plays when it comes to human nutrition, environmental impact, ethical principles, as well as just the overall societal role. And so it's something that was going to be published in a peer-reviewed journal coming up in the spring, as well as the full results of that conference. We were there to support that, and then participating in COP27. We're building it out for COP28 as well. We've basically established a road between now and then over the next year to engage different groups and identify ways that we can showcase the work that we're doing and the commitments that we're making across the industry in places that are meaningful. And this is actually from our Protein Pact Summit that was in October, that asked our members and our partners where they would like us to be engaging. And media and food-focused sustainability summits were the priority. We asked about World Economic Forum, Climate Week in New York, the Biodiversity Conference, and so all of these are different types of avenues that we're considering and thinking about how we can engage and do so in a way that has a positive industry voice on the ground, where oftentimes the animal protein industry is not well represented. So to wrap things up, I'd like to end with a few key takeaways. We are trying to address the challenges we're facing with a continuous improvement focused, consistent approach across the industry. We want to be very collaborative in that. And we want to work with people who are leading the discussion on these issues. And so I look forward to the opportunity to work with more of you here, work with Project Aspire and other efforts going on throughout Canada as well. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Thanks, Eric. Are there any questions? Maybe while you're thinking of them, I'll start with one for you. You mentioned your approach to communication, the development of those materials. I'm just wondering, are there any lessons learned or recommendations for other organizations, going through the same process?
Yeah, I think, I have a communications background, so this is a particular passion of mine. Identifying your key audiences is number one. I think we aimed to do some consumer outreach initially. You need a pretty hefty budget to do that, and unfortunately we don't have that level of budget at this point. But I think setting the baseline of being able to share that work. I think it's really important to bring people on the journey with you. There's different philosophies around ways to communicate on sustainability, and some people say, you have to wait until you have actually accomplished what you've set out to accomplish. And I think the accomplishment piece of it is really important. If you don't accomplish what you've set out to accomplish, you're setting yourself up for trouble. But you have to bring people on the journey with you, and that's what we're trying to do. We want people to feel invested in the work that we're doing and be able to track the progress we're making. And so, I would say, don't wait to communicate. You can't under-communicate these things, and you make sure that's a key part of the strategy.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Any other questions? I don't want to ask all the questions if there are questions from the audience. There's a mic there for you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I'm Robert from Public Trust Works. I have a two-part question, but it's really the theme is collaboration. So how did you get your members to be willing to share their data amongst themselves? First part. Second part is, how did you get them to invest in the communications when quite often what I've found is that organizations are wanting to use their resource dollars to communicate for their own organization versus an industry-led organization?
I'll answer the second one first. We raised their dues to fund the communications and fund all of this, but the communications is the biggest piece of the dues increase. We have brought in money. Our commitment when we raised dues was that we were going to bring in an equal amount from partners to do the communications, and we succeeded at that. There's more opportunity to expand on that, certainly, but yeah, it is an important piece of what we're doing. As far as getting members to share data, it has been a long-term process that we've been building up to over a few years. We didn't just go to members one day and say, okay, share data, this is all brand new to you. And so we definitely went through a process of discomfort and are still managing our way through that with our members, because we don't have that history. But I think making the promises that the data is aggregated. I think the biggest concern is that as an association, we would be able to see or do something with an individual company's data is the biggest concern, and some of the legal and implications around that. Our plan all along has been that the data would be aggregated. There would never be the ability to capture an individual company's data in a public way, and so that eased the minds for a lot of folks. We still have challenges around the data. We did great this year, particularly amongst our largest members. Our smallest members are not quite participating as much yet. The biggest piece of that is just resource constraints. The number one thing we hear from our members who are not participating is, I don't have the time to do this. I'm trying to get product out onto the shelves, and we don't have the resources to be able to spend time on this. The good news is that for most of our members, they've been able to do it within an hour in our system, and so it's not hard. But getting over that hurdle is something that we're still working on. And the way that we're trying to advance this, particularly within our membership, is showing the business value of participating. And so in return for participating, members are getting data back that we hope is useful to their business. So we get the aggregated data, members have dashboards that they can then see their own data compared to industry aggregates, as well as compared to peers. So you can compare to other larger companies, or if you're large companies, other larger companies, small companies, other smaller companies, and then protein types. So if you're producing beef or pork, you can look at other beef or pork companies and see where you fall on every single metric. And so the goal is to be able to allow members to make business decisions and prioritize their business decisions based off of the data that they have. Currently, there's no other resource like that available to our membership, and so we feel like we're offering a unique value. We have to continue to prove that value, and I definitely wrote down the number from Maple Leaf about the value that they've had in making investments on energy and renewable energy projects. We want to show the value of doing all this, and it has to have business value, and so we are actively working on that with our members.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but thank you very much for an informative presentation. It hopefully generated a lot of ideas. It also certainly put the idea out there that there may be the opportunity for greater collaboration from a North American perspective. So everyone, if you could join me in thanking Eric.
Thank you.